Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. You heard me, Michael. You just need to sign the papers and you're done. My wife, Becky, to whom I'd been married for over 25 years, spoke to me. I tried to listen, but her voice became further and further away the longer her tirade against me continued. It all started this afternoon when I came home from my shift at Buckeye Automotive Components. She sat at our kitchen table with a glass of wine and a determined expression on her face. Unfortunately, she only had one glass for herself, and she drank from it because the situation was getting complicated. She didn't think I might like a drink too, or given the way the conversation was going, that I might need one. I knew it was going to be bad when I sat down. She didn't ask how my day at the plant was. She just immediately let me know that she was leaving me. Becky had found her soulmate, someone who made her heart sing in a way I never could, and I was no longer good enough for her. It was difficult for me to hear her. The problem was that as her voice got louder, everything sounded quieter and quieter to me. Our story was pretty typical. Becky and I met in high school and stayed together. Our daughter Emma was born about 6 months after we got married. She wasn't the main reason we got married, but it was on the agenda. Today we both had good jobs, although we weren't rich. I'd say we were upper middle class. I worked as a quality inspection supervisor at Buckeye Automotive, managing the testing protocols and quality assurance for brake components. We had already paid off our house in Westerville, a nice suburb northeast of Columbus, a few years ago and had a decent savings account. We often said we loved each other, took regular family vacations, and although we didn't have the same spark as when we first got married, we still had our moments a couple of times a week. I thought we loved each other deeply and would grow old together. Until today. Becky was still ranting, her face turning red as she continued to tell me what was going on. Michael, look at me. It was becoming difficult for me to concentrate, but I turned my head towards her. You must sign these papers, she continued, pointing to the documents in front of me. Her voice was demanding, but it was hard for me to focus. It was as if the light and colors in the room had faded, although the kitchen lights were still on. Mentally I was upset, but my body didn't react, and the longer I didn't react, the more furious Becky became. The last thing I can remember is Becky raising her hand toward me. I didn't feel the impact. I just thought it would leave a mark on my face. But again, I could not move, and the world continued to plunge into silence. It was a long day. Classes at Ohio State were canceled because there was a power outage across campus, and we were sent home early. I couldn't figure out what was going on when I got to our house in Westerville. The house was terribly quiet. The lights were on, Dad's pickup truck was in the driveway, but Mom's sedan was not. When I entered the kitchen, I threw my backpack and textbooks onto a chair. Dad was sitting at the table. He didn't move, he just stared into space. On the other side of the table, there was an open bottle of Mom's Chardonnay and an almost empty glass. In front of Dad lay a stack of papers with many sign here tabs on them. I walked up to Dad and touched his shoulder from behind. Hi, Dad. I expected him to turn around, but he didn't react. I walked around and looked at his face, and I couldn't help but gasp. His eyes had a glazed look, becoming almost distant, and it looked like tears were flowing from his eyes, but he didn't blink. A thin line of saliva came from the corner of his mouth. I felt panic rise in my chest. Dad, wake up. Dad. Couldn't help but cry. A minute later, Dad still didn't answer. I knew I had to calm down. I told myself, slow down, Emma. Daddy needs help. I pulled out my phone and called 911. I made it clear to them that I could not get my father, Michael Thompson, to respond. They asked me for my details and address, and I told them my name, Emma Thompson, and our home address on Maple Street. They sent an ambulance, telling me it would arrive in about 10 minutes. For the next few minutes, I sat looking at my dad and held his hand. I spoke to him quietly, letting him know that everything would be okay. This man gave me everything growing up. He worked long shifts at the automotive plant but was always present at my school events, musicals, and ballet recitals. When I was just learning to play the violin, he spent hour after hour enduring the screeching sounds, always encouraging me. Finally, he saved enough money to buy me a better violin for my 16th birthday. It wasn't the best, but it was better than my practice violin. 5 years later, I was at Ohio State studying music education with a focus on strings and violin. I had 2 other better violins now, but that one had a special place in my heart because it was given to me by my dad. I didn't know what to do while I waited. Why was Dad like this? What happened? And I had no idea where Mom was. It was then that I looked at the documents, and the words petition for divorce caught my eye. What the hell? I read the first page of the document in a couple of minutes, and goosebumps ran down my spine. For some reason unknown to me, my mother wanted to divorce my father. It seemed very likely that Dad's condition was caused by these documents, and judging by the way Mom's wine was open, she had given Dad the documents and left him alone. People are often surprised how emotions can change so quickly. I believe this has never happened to them before. For me, I felt that all compassion and desire to be with my mother had died. A little later, an ambulance arrived. They put Dad on a gurney and took him to Mount Carmel East Hospital. I was driving behind them. After I had locked the house, I started calling on the way. I called my grandmother, my dad's mom, his sister Kate, his best friend, and then his supervisor at the plant to tell him that Dad would be away for a while. I told them I came home to find him unresponsive and on his way to the hospital. Everyone asked me to keep them updated on his condition, and his supervisor told me he would arrange emergency leave for Dad and inform the plant manager. I knew I was putting off the next call because I was so angry with her, but I decided I needed to call my mom. The phone rang, and she picked it up after a couple of rings. Hello, Emma, my dear. How was your day? Wow. Just wow. Of course, my mother wasn't naive enough to think that I wouldn't know what was going on. Almost an hour had passed since I entered the house and found Dad. Mom knew my schedule, and from the time, it was clear to her that I was already home and had found out everything. Where are you, Mom? She fell silent, not wanting to say anything. I felt her hesitation. So in other words, you just destroyed my father, your husband, and left him without caring about it? Oh no, honey. I tried to explain to your father about Derek and what was going on, but he didn't react, so I thought it best to leave and let him realize that we won't be together anymore. She tried to sound like it was reasonable. However, having found Dad like I did, it was more than likely that she had simply ripped his heart out while he watched. If my guess is correct, you abandoned him when he needed help. Are you really that heartless? Do you know what's going on now? Or don't you care? Anger began to seep into my voice. Sweetie, don't be mad now. I know this is a little shocking, but your dad will be okay. I will only ask for what is mine and some support while Derek and I wait to get married. Yes, my mother had lost touch with reality. You haven't seen me angry yet, Mom. And just so you know, I'm on my way to the hospital right now. Dad's in an ambulance, and when I got home, he looked like he'd had a stroke. Oh, Emma, my dear, I'm sorry to hear this, but no buts, Mom. Let me ask you, is this Derek you're going to see the same Derek from your job at Mutual Trust Insurance that you kept talking about? She hesitated. Yes, darling. Derek is that person. Derek from my mother's insurance office, the one she never shut up about. So I take it he's a dozen years younger than you. And how long have you been having an affair with him? She hesitated again. 6 months. So for the last 6 months, you've been sleeping with someone from your job behind Dad's back. You lied to Dad and me, hiding your relationship with your lover. I had no idea you were capable of this, Mom, and apparently neither did Dad, judging by the state you just left him in. How the hell did you think any of us would be happy about this? Well, I suppose not at first, but as soon as we all adjust to Derek, you'll understand that we're made for each other. She just mentioned we all for the second time. Did she think I would leave my dad to move in with her and her boyfriend? I felt like I was seething with anger. I knew I would say something I couldn't take back if I didn't stop. I'm going to hang up now before I tell you something I may not be able to take back. But let me be completely clear. I will not be moving away from Daddy, and there is no way in hell I will go anywhere near Derek, let alone his apartment. Emma Thompson, she shouted. I am your mother, and you will not talk to me like that, no matter how upset you are. Then I think we're done talking. I hung up before she could say anything else. If she thought I was going to condone what she was doing, she was crazy. She tried to call me back several times. Then she started calling Dad's phone, which was stupid because even if he had it, I doubt he would have answered her call. I had Dad's phone, so I ignored all her calls. By the time I got to the hospital, the ambulance crew had admitted Dad, and he was in a room under observation. Aunt Kate showed up and let me know that she had also received a few calls from my mother, but wasn't sure what was going on other than that her brother was in the hospital. When I explained what happened, Aunt Kate's face flushed so hard that I could almost see steam coming out of her ears. Emma, do you have the documents she left for my brother? Of course, Aunt Kate. Here, in addition to being my aunt, Kate was also our family lawyer. So for the next hour, we sat next to Dad while Kate read the documents and took notes, occasionally muttering under her breath. Doctors and nurses periodically came in and out of the room, checking on Dad. Well, the bad news is that your mother is going to divorce your father. The timeline outlined here shows that this has been going on for over 2 months and should have been filed this week, or it would have cost her far more in legal fees. I shrugged. I had heard every excuse my mother could give me. Because of what she did, I no longer wanted Dad to be with her. It was strange. I was never a daddy's girl. I always looked up to my mother, but her actions were simply disgusting. Derek, her soulmate? Whatever. Mom and Dad shouldn't be together anymore. Kate continued. The good news is that she hired a questionable lawyer to represent her. She will have to pay him a lot just for the divorce and much more if the case goes to court. She smirked. Whereas my dear brother has the best lawyer in town, and he's going to get a 100% family discount. We smiled at each other for the first time that evening. Also, some of the claims here, she wants 50% of the house value and 60% of the financial assets, plus spousal support and child support, are pretty ridiculous. I'm going to guess from your reaction that you don't plan to live with your mother. I shook my head. Good. I have some initial thoughts, but we need to see what happens to your father over the next 24 hours. Your mother may already be in trouble for abandoning him and could be facing charges of domestic abuse. The next few days flew by. The doctors constantly checked on Dad. Physically, he was fine and healthy, but he remained unresponsive to verbal communication. I studied in a hospital chair by his bed with my laptop and textbooks. Every now and then, one of the family would come by to give me a break, and I would go home, sleep for a few hours, change my clothes, and come back. I admit I cried a lot when I was alone in the house. One of the big surprises was that someone from where Dad worked came to check on him. Although I knew his supervisor, Jim, I had never met the actual plant manager. Surprise, it was a woman. Victoria Hayes was a striking woman. Confident, athletic, with warm brown skin, short auburn hair, and green eyes that conveyed both authority and genuine care. It turns out my dad was one of a group at Buckeye Automotive who helped Victoria a few years ago when she went through a messy divorce. Her cheating ex-husband tried to take away her daughter and most of their savings and almost succeeded before Dad introduced her to Aunt Kate. Kate turned the tables, eliminating the need for Victoria to give away any part of her assets and ensuring that Victoria received child support for her then 6-year-old daughter. Victoria came several times and was stunned when I told her the general outline of what happened and why Dad was here in the hospital. She would bring cards from everyone at the plant and sit and hold his hand, telling him stories about work projects and the people who missed him. It turns out that my father was beloved by his coworkers and the plant staff, and everyone couldn't get enough of his dedication to keeping everyone safe through quality control. I should tell you that Dad is a quality inspection supervisor by profession and works at Buckeye Automotive Components, specializing in brake system testing and safety protocols. It can be demanding work, but apparently my dad made everyone's workday a little safer and more pleasant. One afternoon, about 2 weeks later, I had just returned from home when I entered the room. Kate and Victoria were finishing their conversation. I could tell it was a little heated, but their anger was directed at my mother, not each other. My mother had written a letter to Victoria demanding that she be given access to information about Dad's work benefits and any bonuses he might have received over the past few years. The letter demanded that she receive compensation within 30 days, or she would pursue legal action against the company. Apart from the stupidity of making such demands, it looked like she and her new boyfriend were short of cash. Since I froze all their joint assets while Michael is being treated, Kate said with a very satisfied grin on her face. I laughed, announcing my presence. Yes, this morning I received my first message from my mother in 2 weeks. A text message asking me to give her money. I didn't answer because I was still very upset about her actions. I mean, she hasn't asked about Dad once since I told her what she did to him. Over the past couple of weeks, Victoria had become very protective of my father. Whenever my mother was mentioned, her eyes would narrow and her voice would drop, indicating a deep dislike. It was almost as if I could see fire appearing around the edges of those green eyes. I just hoped she would never have to sit in a room with my mother. I was afraid she might lose her temper. I may not love my mother very much now, but she was still my mother, and she had hurt the most wonderful person I knew. Emma, if it weren't for your father, I wouldn't have my Sophia or my peace of mind. Many people at the plant helped me during one of the hardest moments of my life, but your father went above and beyond. He never judged my ex-husband or me. He just listened and offered practical help. No one has ever really done that without expecting something in return. He introduced me to your aunt, making sure I was looked after. If he were a single man, I would pursue him without hesitation. After the divorce, I shrugged and let a smile light up my face. Well, soon he will be a single man. This brought realization to their faces. Kate giggled and Victoria smiled. Thank you, Emma. I needed to hear that. I still can't believe what your mother did to him or that she rejected such a wonderful man. I have to get back to the plant, but first, I'll do this. Victoria walked up to my father, and as Kate and I watched, leaned over and kissed him gently but sincerely on the lips. She looked at us and smiled, but her smile turned to shock a moment later when my dad made a soft sound. When I woke up, I felt soft lips on mine, just the right amount of pressure, and behind them was a gentle intention that conveyed an affection I hadn't felt in a long time. I heard the beeping of medical equipment and myself making a small sound as almost every muscle in my body ached. I expected Becky to be standing over my bed when I opened my eyes after such a tender kiss, but there was Victoria standing there with a smile on her face. Victoria, Emma, and Kate came up from the other side of the bed. It's okay, Daddy. Everything will be fine with you. Do you hear me? My memories caught up with me a moment later, and I realized that Becky was leaving me, or more likely had already left me. What's happened? Over the next few minutes, the three of them filled me in on how Emma had discovered that I was unresponsive and called an ambulance, how she had found divorce papers revealing that Becky had been cheating on me for several months, how Becky had made demands once Kate blocked our finances until they found out what was happening to me. How long? I asked. 2 weeks, Michael, Kate answered. I looked at Victoria. Victoria, did you kiss me? Victoria blushed. Yes, sorry. I was saying goodbye before heading back to the plant. I smiled. No, everything is okay. I'm going to be available soon, so I think it's perfectly fine. Over the next few hours, I was examined by numerous doctors, examinations, blood tests, MRI. Victoria canceled her evening plans and stayed, as did Kate and Emma. Among the doctors who came to see me was a psychologist. I told him I came home and found Becky drinking alone, and she told me she was leaving me. Then I told him that when she began to intensify her accusations, the world began to lose color, light and sound disappeared, and it was difficult for me to move or speak, although I wanted to. My last memory was of Becky striking me and shouting at me, but I couldn't understand her words or respond. All the women gasped when they learned that Becky had hit me while I couldn't respond. Dad, what time do you think this happened? I'd say it was about 5, baby. Why do you need to know this? Because it was after 7:30 when I got home and found you. So I guess Mom must have left you there alone for quite a long time. The psychologist intervened. It's not unusual for someone in your situation to experience this kind of response to severe emotional trauma. In your case, I would say that you went into a form of dissociative state when you heard your wife announce that she was leaving you. The inability to speak or move is a protective mechanism. Of course, this is a much more extreme case than we usually see, but it makes sense given your history. Kate spoke up. When Michael was little, there was a bully several years older than him. He teased Michael quite often, and one day one of the parents in the neighborhood found Michael lying on the ground in the park. From what our parents told me, they put him to bed, and he woke up the next morning. No one ever thought much about it since the next day, he woke up at the same time as usual. But it really happened. I nodded. I remember Billy pushing me and teasing me in the park. After a while, I don't remember what happened, but when I woke up, Mom and Dad told me that I had lost consciousness and someone had carried me home. When I told them about Billy, they went and talked to his parents. The next day, Billy came up to me at school and apologized. I chuckled at the memory. I don't think it was sincere, but after that day, he never bothered me again. Well, I think we may have some pattern recognition here, the psychologist said. In many ways, the mind is still poorly understood. However, if something like this has happened before, it makes sense that it could happen again. I frowned. He smiled. I wouldn't worry too much. With the love and attention of these 3 wonderful women, even if something happens again, I think you will be well taken care of. We talked for a few more minutes before he excused himself and left. I also felt tired. This may sound strange to someone who has been unconscious for the past 2 weeks, but I was exhausted. So I sent all 3 women home to get some rest and told them they could come see me tomorrow and make sure I was okay. The next 2 days brought me back to life. Victoria brought me some light reading and a few simple puzzles to do just to keep me occupied. Kate stopped by primarily to show me the amended divorce papers and to get me to sign some documents so she could get to work dissolving my marriage to Becky. Kate also brought along a young detective, Karen Hill. Detective Hill questioned me for over an hour about my experiences that night with Becky. She thanked me and informed Kate and me that we would receive her report in a few days. I wasn't sure if we were filing charges against Becky. Kate told me to leave it all to her, kissed my forehead, and left. In the afternoon of the second day after I woke up, I was discharged from the hospital so that I could return home. Emma accompanied me, and I was surprised when Victoria met us outside the building and helped Emma walk me to her large SUV. Victoria stayed for dinner that evening. We ordered takeout, she helped clean up, and then stayed with us for a couple of hours to watch TV. As she turned to leave, Emma hugged her, and then made sure I walked her to her car. Victoria, thank you so much for everything you have done over the past few weeks. I don't know how I can repay you. Well, in a few weeks when you feel at ease again, you can invite me to dinner and maybe a movie. She laughed. I blushed. Just today I left the hospital in the afternoon, and the woman whose kiss woke me up was already, in the evening of the same day, suggesting we spend time together. But she was lovely, and I was soon to become a bachelor again. Okay. Next Friday evening after I get back to work. This will give me almost 2 weeks to get back to normal. She nodded and came over and hugged me tightly. It lingered a little longer, and I sensed more hidden meaning. As she got into her car, I found it funny that I briefly wondered what the name of that strange woman I had been married to for almost 25 years was. Over the next few days, Emma, Kate, and Victoria took turns checking on me, making sure I was okay. It was nice to be so taken care of. However, the news that Kate brought me took us all a little by surprise that Friday afternoon. "So Becky was arrested this afternoon," she said. "What happened?" I asked. "Well, after your statement to the police at the hospital, a warrant was issued for Becky's arrest based on domestic abuse and abandonment of a person in distress. This is based on the fact that at the time, you were incapacitated and unable to defend yourself. Add to that the fact that she left you without supervision or help for an unknown amount of time, and she's in big trouble." "What does this mean for the divorce?" asked Victoria, who had joined us again for dinner. Her 8-year-old daughter Sophia was with her that evening, watching a Disney movie in the living room while we talked. I was returning to work on Monday, so Victoria and I would see each other at the plant, but I was beginning to realize that she meant more to me than just my boss. Kate smiled. "This will probably mean that some things will go in Michael's favor. Judging by the state of the bank accounts and the house, I was insisting on a 50-50 split. I know he could have asked for more after everything that happened. However, I assumed Michael would want to be fair." I nodded. "She won't be able to touch any of the assets she tried to claim from the company. I filed a case against her for harassment in addition to charges of domestic abuse. This won't do much except stop her from touching things that don't belong to her. Most likely, she will be released in a couple of days, not much worse for wear, and will be able to return to her boyfriend. What I want to do is settle the divorce quickly using Michael's hospitalization as evidence. Then I have plans depending on how she reacts. I will make sure that nothing unnecessary is taken from Michael." She smiled. "So how long will the divorce take, Aunt Kate?" asked Emma. "I believe if everything goes well, it should take about 3 months. If Becky wants to fight something, I'll bring in the big guns, and it will take longer, but it will hurt her a lot more." That evening, as I walked Victoria to the car, Emma helped Sophia into the back seat. Victoria hugged me again and surprised me with a brief kiss, reminding me of how I woke up the other day. "Michael, I know that you are married and you are an honest person, so I'm not going to rush too much, but I want to let you know that I care about you. Of course, I've cared about you for a long time, but I would never pursue a married man or interfere with someone's marriage. It happened to me, and I don't want it to happen to anyone else, even if their marriage is falling apart." I looked into her deep green eyes for a moment and brushed a strand of her auburn hair out of her face before I leaned in to kiss her. Instead of a soft and gentle kiss, I let the kiss be meaningful for maybe 30 seconds. I knew we both felt connected. Victoria's eyes were closed when I pulled away, and she smiled, enjoying our kiss. I grinned. "This is so that you know that I welcome your attention." We turned to look at the girls. Both of them were giggling as they watched us kiss. Sophia was clapping her hands, and Emma had a big knowing grin on her face. As Victoria and Sophia pulled out of the driveway, Emma hugged me, and we waved. The next few months were something of a roller coaster. On the one hand, Becky wanted the divorce to go quickly. On the other hand, she was not happy with the settlement. It looked like Derek was pushing her to demand more, telling her that she should get the lion's share of the assets. He fed her unrealistic expectations, and on some level, she had to know it was nonsense after all these years of marriage. As the settlement demands became increasingly outlandish, Kate made one call to Becky's lawyer, and although I don't know what was said, all objections to the settlement ceased overnight. Victoria and I met every Friday night. Since Emma was living at home and commuting to Ohio State, she was able to help with Sophia on weekends, picking her up from school on Fridays and keeping an eye on her, giving Victoria and me time to have dinner, drink coffee, watch a show, or go to a movie. Of course, we never did anything more than hold hands and kiss, but I had a feeling that the evening of my divorce would be something different. I went back to work, and everything was going well. As a manufacturing plant, we served our automotive clients well, we all did our jobs, we were paid reasonably for it, and we generally had a good time together as a team. I think the staff realized that at some point Victoria and I were becoming a couple, although everyone was happy for both of us. We had to maintain professional boundaries during work hours since she was the plant manager and I was a department supervisor. About 3.5 months later, we received notice that the divorce would be finalized in a week, starting the following Thursday. There was no trial, but Becky asked for a meeting to talk before the final ruling. I agreed to meet the day before, and we arranged that she would come to the house to see Emma and me. I took the afternoon off and cooked pork chops with mashed potatoes and green beans for the three of us. It was a favorite meal for all three of us, and I hoped it would make the evening's conversation a little less awkward. Emma got home around 5:30 and went to shower and change. Then, just before 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang, and Becky was standing at the front door. Now, I haven't described Becky all this time, but maybe I will now. Before everything fell apart a few months ago, Becky was an attractive woman in her 40s. She had shoulder-length brown hair, a curvy figure, and although she carried a few extra pounds, she was still very attractive with a warm smile and confidence to match. She was a good-looking woman. But unfortunately, the woman standing in front of me was almost unrecognizable. Becky had gained a significant amount of weight. She had a puffy face and seemed uncomfortable in her clothes, which were loose and unflattering. I'm not judgmental about weight, but this wasn't the Becky I knew. I think my shock at her appearance showed on my face. Becky winced but didn't say anything. Hi Becky. Please come in. We walked into the kitchen, and I offered her a glass of wine, which she accepted. We chatted about small things for a few minutes. She asked about work and if I was taking care of myself. I asked her about work and didn't bother commenting on how she should take care of herself. Derek likes me this way. He didn't like how thin I was, so we worked on me gaining weight, she mentioned. Addressing the unspoken question, I frowned. For more than 25 years, I loved this woman, and yet despite what she did to me, I still worried about her health. You don't approve, do you? She looked at me. No, Becky, I don't. When we were together, you were in excellent health and took care of yourself. But to be honest, I'm concerned about your appearance. You don't look well, and if I weren't so hurt by what you did, I would be very worried about your health and would try to help you. But you made your choice. Her face dropped. You and Emma. You're happy and healthy without me here. Well, there's a part of me that still cares. But when you left here and pretty much left me in crisis, I shrugged. She sighed. I deserve it. I did a terrible thing, didn't I? No, Mom. Emma had just emerged from the shower. You did a damn terrible thing. You single-handedly tore a happy family apart and then walked out the door without a care in the world. And I, for one, can't understand why Dad agreed to let you come here tonight. Emma, calm down. Your mother knows what situation we are in and how unhappy we all are. Coming here must have been difficult for her. She asked for this meeting tonight, so I thought the least we could do was be adults and listen to her. Emma was not happy. As far as I understood, she, like me, had not spoken to her mother since that fateful day. Judging by the way my daughter looked at her mother, this wasn't going to end well for anyone. It was time to change the subject. I tried to appear cheerful. Difficult conversations are not good on an empty stomach, so let's eat first. So I served dinner. No one said a word, but there were a lot of glances at each other around the table. Emma just stared at her mother the whole time. After dinner, I cleared the table, and Becky asked to speak to Emma alone first. No way in hell. You can tell me whatever you want in front of both of us. I was surprised, but I could see that Emma was determined not to be alone with her mother. I think Becky saw it too. The look in her eyes was exactly the same as when she had confronted me that fateful night. She nodded. Becky took a deep breath. She didn't want to do this in front of me, but she looked at Emma. Well, Emma, I wanted to ask you to forgive me for what I did that night. I thought this through all wrong, and no matter what, I don't want to be away from my daughter forever. Becky looked at me. There's one more thing, but I would prefer to say it in private and not in front of your father. Sorry, Mom, But if you can't say it to both of us, then I don't want to hear it." With that, before Becky could do anything else, Emma stood up and left. A moment later, we heard her bedroom door close firmly. "I wanted everything to go better," Becky said quietly, more for herself than for me. "I think it went pretty well, all things considered," I told her, letting her know I heard her. "Really?" "Yes, indeed." I sighed. "Becky, you have to understand that right now, everyone who lives in this house doesn't trust you. Let me lay it out for you. First, you had a long-term affair with someone, then you hid it from both Emma and me. Then out of the blue, you hand me the divorce papers, and after I've had a breakdown and become unresponsive, you yell and then hit me." Becky looked startled. "Yes, I still have memories of most of that confrontation until you hit me. Now let's continue. Then you leave when I can't react and abandon me there until Emma comes home and finds me in crisis." Becky looked scared now. "When Emma calls you, you show absolutely no concern for me. When your daughter is clearly worried about her father, you never once inquired about my health until tonight. You made unreasonable demands through your lawyer, and when you walk in here, it's still all about you. You asked Emma to forgive you, but you never said you were sorry to her." I paused just for a moment to see if it would get through to her. "Yes, Becky, I think with all that said, it went really well." Becky was now looking at the floor with tears in her eyes. They hadn't fallen yet, but they were ready. I didn't know if they were for Emma, for me, or just still about herself. I continued, "So our divorce will be final tomorrow, and if you have nothing else to say, then I think we have fulfilled your request for a final meeting." I walked to the door and opened it. She looked at me and left. Having crossed the threshold, she turned and looked at me. "Michael, we really had a few good years, didn't we?" "Yes, Becky. Most of our time together was amazing. You were a wonderful partner, a caring wife, and a loving mother. I don't know what Derek did to convince you, but I don't see anything of the woman I fell in love with in the person standing in front of me. All I see is someone who was manipulated into becoming someone else and not caring about the people around her." She looked at her feet again. "You really mean it, don't you, Michael?" "Yes." She turned to leave, then turned around one last time. This time she looked broken. "Michael, about the house and money. Derek told me that I should ask for more, so that was the point of this visit. It wasn't about reuniting with her family. It was just about money." I laughed bitterly. Becky looked at me, wondering why I was laughing. "Go and tell your boyfriend that at this time tomorrow, you will receive your share of the savings and equity that was agreed upon in the settlement that your lawyer gave to Kate." Becky looked at me. "I'm warning you, keep this money away from Derek. Otherwise, you won't have it for long." The next morning brought the final decree. Becky and I were no longer husband and wife. There was a small part of me that was sad, but that was a very small part. Mostly I was relieved. The last few months had not been easy for anyone. Now I was free, and at 48 years old, I still had a lot of life in me. Kate called me and said that she would bring pizza to my house tonight. Emma stopped by the plant for lunch. We talked about her mother, in happier times when we were a family. I know she didn't love her mother very much right now, but I know she missed the woman she used to be. To be honest, me too. We had many good years together. Well, I think there was some coordination between Emma and Victoria. When Emma left, not even 5 minutes later, I was called into Victoria's office. She closed the door and then kissed me with an intensity that took my breath away, although I have to admit that I may have kissed her back in the same way. "Can I officially say that you are mine now, Michael?" I felt a tender spot on my neck where she may have left a mark when she kissed my neck a moment ago. "I think you may have already done that." Dinner that night was wonderful. Emma, Kate, Victoria, and Sophia were with me, and we celebrated my freedom from Becky. That Friday night, while the girls were occupied with a movie, Victoria and I took our relationship to the next level. The connection between us was everything I had hoped for and more. 6 months later, We got married in a beautiful small ceremony at a local park with many people from the plant and community in attendance. We would have liked to get married later. However, we wanted to do it before Emma and Sophia's little brother was born. It was 5 years later. Emma, her boyfriend Jake, Victoria, and I had just sat down to dinner at one of our local restaurants when 5-year-old Lucas asked, "Dad, who is that lady who keeps staring at us?" We all turned around and saw Becky sitting across the restaurant. She had lost weight and looked more like her old self, but she stared at us and didn't look pleased. We hadn't seen or heard from her since we got divorced. She never even tried to contact Emma. I apologized to the family and approached her table. "Hello, Becky." "Hello, Michael. How are you doing?" She looked down at the salad she was eating. "You were right, Michael. You were right about him. Derek convinced me that I was his soulmate and you were nothing. But when I didn't get the money immediately, he convinced me to change myself because he said he loved me that way. When I got the money after the divorce, you told me not to give it to him, but I didn't listen. He spent it in a couple of months and then he left me and disappeared without ever marrying me. I was still upset with her, but her story didn't have a happy ending like mine did. From then on, I spent every moment trying to rebuild the confidence he destroyed and get back to who I used to be." She fought back tears and looked at me. "After all these years, I can see the woman I used to be again. Michael, I'm so sorry I treated you terribly. I did it because I was convinced that Derek knew everything you didn't know. I left the only man who had ever truly loved me." She stopped and grabbed the edge of the table. "You could have died because of what I did. I know you can never forgive me, but I want to say that I'm very sorry." Now she was crying openly. Surprisingly, Emma came and stood next to me. She also heard her mother's apology. I looked at her, and she smiled tiredly at me and took my hand. I don't know. Maybe this was the first time she saw that her mother was truly sorry. Her expression softened, and she extended her hand to her mother. Seeing Emma standing there and then extending her hand, Becky panicked and tried to get up and walk away, but Emma blocked her path. "Mom, stop it. You don't have to go anywhere." Emma slid into the booth next to Becky, and I sat on the other side. I looked at Victoria and saw her nod. So for the next hour, mother and daughter talked. There were a lot of apologies, there were quite a lot of tears, but for once they were healing and not harmful. Once they had finished talking, Emma and I brought Becky to our table and introduced her to everyone else. I could tell Becky was pretty emotional when she was introduced to Lucas. After that day, we kind of let Becky back into our lives. Emma slowly reconnected with her mother. Every week or two, they would have coffee. The trust between them grew slowly but surely. When Emma got married to Jake, Becky actually took on the role of mother of the bride. Victoria would invite Becky over to our house for dinner from time to time, and at first, I think it was out of curiosity about what Becky had given up when Victoria benefited by marrying me. However, although they were never close, Victoria and Becky developed a cordial relationship that I never fully understood. Kate never forgave Becky for what she did to me, although she was always polite to her whenever they came into contact. And with Victoria's blessing, Becky and I did a little post-divorce counseling. We discussed many of our problems. Since that time more than 5 years ago, the counselor suggested that Becky might have been dealing with some personal issues. However, Becky didn't accept that explanation. No, that day I threw away the most important thing in my life. I had a husband who loved me and a daughter who wanted to be with me. No amount of personal problems can justify the way I systematically ruined everything good in my life for someone who whispered sweet promises in my ear. Someone who turned out to be worthless. She smiled sadly at me with this statement. Michael and Emma deserved much better from me. She cried and then wiped her tears with a tissue. 5 years passed before I was able to reconnect. 5 years that I lost and was not with them. I thank God every day that Michael allowed me back into his life, and Victoria too. She blushed at this confession. She had every right to hate me, but she treated me kindly every time we met. No, She was fortunate. She got everything I threw away, and I will live with that for the rest of my life. Becky benefited from these sessions much more than I did. It was helpful to confirm that neither Emma nor I had done anything to cause Becky to leave us, and she was right. Victoria picked us up and made us a much stronger family. As they say, people pay for their mistakes if they make them long enough, which is what Derek did. He moved to another state and again tried to manipulate a married woman for her money, but this time the husband caught Derek with his wife and turned him over to the authorities. Derek received several years in prison, and it looks like he will be there for a while longer if rumors from Kate, who now represented the victim, are true. Victoria and I love each other very much. I never thought I would ever be able to love as much and as deeply as I loved Becky, but Victoria proved me wrong. Victoria not only gave me her love but also her complete trust and devotion. We still work at Buckeye Automotive, I in quality control and she in plant management, and I still have the same position. We have our ups and downs, but we never let anything get in the way of communication when it's important. Our relationship remains strong, and our connection continues to deepen. We even traveled to some beautiful places during our vacations. Usually, one meaningful look is enough, and we find time to express our love for each other. One day, we had just finished an intimate moment, showered, and dressed when we arrived in the kitchen to find Emma and Becky talking. Last month we found out that Emma was expecting a baby, so there was excitement in the room as the women planned for my first grandchild. Oh my God, Emma. The way they act, you'd think these two were teenagers, Becky joked. Victoria, you need to tell me what you're feeding Michael. Maybe I can get some of that for Fred. Fred was Becky's new, much more suitable boyfriend. Mom, leave them alone. We all know that Dad's been like a man with a new lease on life, Emma teased. Since when, honey? Becky asked, her eyes sparkling with slight mischief. I think Dad's energy has gone up 3 notches since he woke up after being discharged from the hospital and started his new life. Becky fell silent and so did Emma. Victoria blushed for me, and I just sat back, grinned at my family, and felt my heart fill with happiness, looking at Victoria. Then I stood up and walked back toward our bedroom, Victoria following me a moment later. She locked the bedroom door behind her. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.